Did you know that according to a 2011 study, CVs are looked at for just 5 seconds by employers? Now, as a careers consultant here at UCL, looking at many CVs over the course of a year, I think 5 seconds is more than enough to get a feeling for whether that document is working for a candidate or not. Join me for 5 key areas or ways of supercharging your chemistry CV. Key point number 1, understanding exactly where employers look on your CV. Now, we know from a 2011 study looking at unoptimized CVs that employers are really keen at looking at your CV along this left-hand side margin. So very fundamentally, a good chemistry CV is going to be one that puts exactly what the employer is looking for, and we know that from the job description, putting those things exactly where the employer is looking, i.e. along this left-hand area. Key point number 2, and it's something I see a lot from with students. It's students who are really happy and passionate about their accomplishments, their achievements, their work experience, and they're really keen to convey all of those elements. But I would say perhaps the strongest CVs start with what the employer wants to see in terms of skills and attributes, things that they themselves have listed on their job descriptions, and then reverse engineering. So you're extracting precisely those skills and attributes that the employer wants to see, and you're identifying where those elements are present in your work experience, or perhaps during your times experimenting in the lab. Key point number 3. A lot of people come and see me about their CVs and they say something along the lines of, Raj, I just don't know how to write a really good sentence on a CV. I feel like I'm selling myself, or I feel like I'm trying to big up whatever it is I'm trying to say. I can't get the words out right. I'm not sure whether to use big words or small words. And I recommend an approach that takes it really back to basics and implementing a kind of a formula. And the formula is this. It's simply skill plus evidence plus quantification. And let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. The skill is the component that you've identified as being really important to the employer, and you know that from the job description, and you're locating it as the first thing, the anchor point for that sentence, so that the reader knows that if they read the rest of that sentence, they will learn about your ability with this skill. So you're starting with that thing that's most important to the employer. The second component of the formula is evidence. It's essentially the how, the real description of how you've used that skill. So if it's communication skill the employer really wants, you might go along and say something along the lines of communication skills were developed by, and then you might go ahead and describe how you've used perhaps open questions, summarizing, repeating things back to the listener to ensure that you've understood it in the correct way. You're really getting to the mechanics of the skill and describing how you've used them in that setting. And then the last component of that formula is quantification, just a fancy word for saying numbers, essentially. I find in CVs, when numbers are used in descriptions, it really helps scale things and bring things to life in the reader's view. If I know how many people you might have communicated with, how many flyers you might have produced to reach how much of a readership, really helps me to picture exactly what you're able to do and to make your example come to life and convince me that that skill is something that you absolutely possess. Key point number 4, talk a little bit more about your skills and your technical attributes, and perhaps a little less about the modules that you've undertaken. You might be very proud of your mark in computational chemistry, but I might argue that it's a lot more important for an employer to know about your skills in spectroscopy or in MATLAB or in Simulink, such that they can get a stronger view as to how useful you might be in their project or work setting. So number 5, a CV is not a chronicle of everything you've done and everything you're proud of. Just include the things that are super relevant to the job description that you're going for, to ensure that the reader just sees what he or she wants to see rather than absolutely everything. So now let's turn our attention to 2 specific chemistry CVs to get a taste of what potentially works well with them and potentially what could be strengthened as well. But let's first look at these in respect of a particular job description. Okay, so let's look at how an employer might look at a job description when he or she is then going to be looking at CVs. So for me, I'm looking at this sheet of paper, I'm seeing a day in the life of a regulatory affairs future leader. They'll give a little bit of a description. They're talking about career prospects, but really my eye is led to our ideal candidate will have. And the reason that I'm focusing in on that area is because those are the real building blocks of what a good CV is going to look like for this particular role. I know that I have to build on each of the things that the employer is looking for and really bring that out in my education and in my experiences. So when I look at this, I'm putting 90% of my focus on our ideal candidate will have, and I'm looking through the fact that they want someone who can build strong relationships, self-motivated approach, the ability to adapt to change, and I'm going to be looking at incorporating as many of these facets and bringing them to life in the following CVs. So let's have a think of how Ben and Nye's CVs work, potentially don't work, and how they fit in accordance to the job description we saw previously, that of GSK's Regulatory Affairs Future Leader. In my view, I think Nye does a far better job of tailoring his CV for that GSK role for regulatory affairs. And the reason I say that is, firstly, because he's thought about what the most relevant modules are to that role, and he's done that by having a look at where GSK's scientific requirements lie. He's talked about a particular technique in his second year project that could be utilised and very important in the realm of regulatory affairs. Critically, he's also engineered his Mace Summer placement and how he's talking about it to directly match and mirror what GSK are asking for. The top 4 things on GSK's ideal candidate list are mirrored in what Nye is talking about in his summer placement. Now, some of you might see this as really cynical or robotic or formulaic. As a recruiter, you really don't mind that. You actually love it, because as a recruiter, I want to make my mind up in the shortest amount of time as possible, because I've got 70 unread emails, I haven't had my lunch yet, so I'm looking for the obvious, and the obvious really works for Nye, in a way that potentially it just doesn't for Ben. I'm looking at his CV, and I'm looking for an ability to build strong relationships. I don't see it. I'm looking for a self-motivated and proactive approach. I don't really see it. And so in those 5 seconds, all I'm getting is a mishmash of fonts, and the things that I really want to see, the things I've told Ben that I want to see, are just not clearly coming out at me. So for me, Ben's CV is simply not tailored, but Nye is hyper-tailored and really focusing in on precisely what GSK wants and doing a really good job of actually showing it too. Really good job, Nye. So in conclusion, a really good chemistry CV is one that puts the employer at the heart of that document, putting what they want central. A little bit of effort here goes a very long way, and know that we can support you through the process. Simply book an applications appointment through UCL Careers, and we'd love to sit with you and work through what you've got. Good luck.